Can a man spend 40 years realizing the truth and still not be free? Not free from the world, free from himself. This is the story of a man who had spent a lifetime conquering the mind, only to discover that one thing still remained unconquered. Imagine a man who has answered every question he ever had about reality, not through books, not through belief, but through 40 years of relentless practice. For him, the absolute was no longer a philosophy, it was direct experience. The body changed, thoughts came and went, the world appeared and disappeared. But beneath it all, he knew himself as the unchanging reality. He needed nothing, wanted nothing. The world, with its rituals, temples, and forms, seemed like passing appearances, Maya, and by every measure he had succeeded, which is what makes what happened next so difficult to explain. One day, Totapuri stopped at a temple garden near Calcutta. There he met a young priest. The contrast between them could not have been greater. Totapuri lived in the world of the formless absolute. The young priest spent his days singing, praying, and losing himself in devotion to the Divine Mother. To Totapuri, such practices belonged to an earlier stage of the journey. And yet, beneath all of that devotion, he sensed something unusual, a rare readiness. So he offered to initiate the young priest into the path of Advaita. What happened next left him astonished. The priest Ramakrishna entered the highest state of absorption almost immediately, a state Totapuri had spent decades realizing for himself. The teacher watched in silence, and for the first time in a very long time, he had questions. Totapuri never stayed anywhere for more than a few days. This time, he stayed for 11 months. At the time, he may have believed he was teaching, but life had arranged something else. One afternoon, a servant approached Totapuri's dhuni and drew a flame from it to light his tobacco. A small thing. The kind of thing most people would forget a moment later. Totapuri did not. He sprang to his feet, furious, and moved toward the man. Nearby, Ramakrishna began to laugh, not mockingly, almost with delight, as though he had just noticed something important. Totapuri stopped and looked at him. "You tell me the world is Maya," Ramakrishna said. "You tell me nothing here is ultimately real." Then he pointed toward the servant. "And yet, a single flame from your dhuni has disturbed your peace." For a moment, neither man spoke. Totapuri sat back down. The anger had passed, but the question remained. How could a mind that had spent decades transcending the world be pulled so suddenly into it? It was a small incident, easy to dismiss, yet something in it lingered. Then the body arrived with its own argument. Severe illness, the kind of pain that comes at 3 in the morning and does not care what you know, what you have realized, or how many years you have practiced. Totapuri responded the only way he knew. He turned inward. Again and again, he tried to lift his awareness beyond the body, to rest in the formless, to let the pain be present without becoming lost in it. But night after night, the pain returned, unmoved by philosophy, unimpressed by realization, waiting for him each time he closed his eyes, a question began to take shape. If the truth is beyond the body, why does the body still have such power? Totapuri had no answer. He had only the pain, and the dark, and a river nearby. He walked into the Ganga in the darkness and kept walking. The water reached his knees. He walked farther. Still his knees. Farther still. He kept waiting for the water to deepen. It never did. By the time he reached the opposite bank, he was exhausted, wet, still alive, with no explanation for either. And when he turned around, he saw it. The Kali temple, lit by moonlight. The same goddess he had spent his whole life dismissing as Maya. Her reflection trembled across the surface of the water. He stood there, not practicing, not reaching, not trying to understand. For a long moment, he simply looked, and something began to shift. Standing on that riverbank, something became clear, not as a conclusion, not as a philosophy, as something seen directly. For years, Totapuri had spoken of the Absolute as though it were separate from the world, beyond it, higher than it. Yet, the river, the pain, the night, the temple, and the goddess he had dismissed were not standing outside that reality. They were expressions of it. In the morning, he walked back across the river. He entered the Kali temple and bowed, not because he had abandoned Advaita and not because he had suddenly become a devotee, but because a division had fallen away, the formless and the form, Brahman and Shakti, the Absolute and the world. What he had taken to be two, he now saw as one. He had spent 40 years realizing the Absolute. Perhaps the deepest insights arrive when life refuses to behave the way we expect. It took one night, a stomach illness, a shallow river, and a temple in moonlight to realize that the Absolute was nowhere absent. If this reflection resonated with you, you may subscribe to this channel to explore more timeless wisdom here, not as stories of the past, but as mirrors for our own lives. Om Tat Sat.